Okay, so we're going to go over a couple things today with matrices. First, let's look at your attendance. Okay, so what's your shortcut in the calculator that says solve the system of equations? Menu 3-2. Okay, so if three equations are given to you, and it says what is the solution, solve the system, you go to your calculator, you're in your calculate button. Well, there you go. You get menu, 3 for algebra, 2 equations or 3, just depends on the question, and then this when solve pops up, and from here you are typing in exactly what you see, hit enter, and the problem is solved. Okay, so that's your menu 3-2. Then, if the inequality is just your greater than or less than, is the line solid or dotted? Dotted. Okay, so when it's graphed, you'd have dotted. And remember the inequality, we talked about either shading below or above the line yesterday. Okay, I'm not going to check the steepness of the graph, but I do look at the x and y intercepts. Is it solid? Is it dotted? Is the shading correct? Okay. Next one. Is the point negative 5,1 a solution to the system? So I graph negative 5,1. No, it's not. It has to be in that double shaded region. Okay. So either where the colors are different or where it's a little bit darker. So no, that one is not a solution. Is the 0.51 a solution? Yes. So 5,1 works. If I asked you to list 3 solutions, it would be any points that are in that double shaded region. So I could say 5, negative 3. 5, negative 3 is there. 6, 0 is there. 3, 0 is there. Okay. And any other points that you could list that are in that double shaded area. What's tomorrow's thing? Mismatch. 2 different shoes, different color socks, crazy hair if you want to go that far and do it. I won't be here tomorrow, so really it's going to be an honest thing that you do. On your Google Doc for your Google form for your attendance, a question will say, do you have mismatch wear on today? Did you participate in today's theme? And you'll say yes or no. If you say yes, I'm going to give you credit for it. If you say no, then obviously you're being honest about it. Okay? Because tomorrow I will not be here. I'll be staying in the mud yelling at kids to run fast.
Yeah, throw that.
So hopefully we get the race in. The only thing that would stop it is lightning.
Tomorrow's the only day it's supposed to thunderstorm.
I know. I know. So we'll see. I'll give you this paper version of 3.5, but we need to talk about some operations with matrix first. Okay? But tomorrow when you're working, you're going to have this 3.5 to work on, yesterday's paper with the shading to work on, and then Friday's paper that had the word problems. It was originally due yesterday at midnight, but I went in there and adjusted the time to Wednesday. Okay. After this lesson, this paper is easy enough. You actually could spend 10 minutes in class and get done and check that off the list. On the sideboard, I list what is going to go on your progress reports. Okay. Let me erase this real quick. Okay, so what will be on the progress reports? Well, the first thing is that quiz is from October 8th. That was before the school closure. There's actually 2 of those. The second thing was Friday's, the 23rd, the word problems that are in there for Unit 3. There were 6 of them. The third one is the shading, which was yesterday, 3-4. Fourth grade you'll see is the matrix, which is today, 3-5. And then the 5th thing will be a attendance check. Okay. So hopefully you check those off tomorrow. If you don't do those today, check those off tomorrow. And then the attendance checks, I'll go in there and make sure you have everything in. You can't lose eligibility this Friday, but you can regain. So if you failed term 1, you can regain because you have to be passing all classes, not just the one you failed. Okay, so make sure that that's you get taken care of. All right, so for today, the first part's easy, the second part's hard. So 3-5, this is operations of matrix. And plural matrices. Okay, so the first one. If I give you 16, -9, 2, and 8, that's a matrix inside of the bracket. This would be a 2x2 matrix because there's 2 rows, 2 columns. This is also a 2x2 for B. C would be a 2x1 because it's just 8 and 6. Okay. So I could ask you to add A plus B and say, what is the new matrix if you're adding A and B? So what would you think to do? What would be, there's 4 spots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. What would be this top left spot?
12, 4, 4, -12.
So exactly what you think would happen is what happens. Corresponding parts, okay, or locations, top left and top left, you add to get to that top left. Top right, you add. And it doesn't matter the order that you do it. -9, add -3. 8, add -7 is 1. Okay, so that one makes sense. If I ask you to add B and C, what would you do to add B and C?
If you do it to both sides.
Okay, so obviously when you look at it, they're not even, right? So your thought is, well, do I just add 8 and 6 to both of those numbers? Or what do I do?
Do you split it?
You actually can't do it. It's undefined. It has to match. So when you're adding and subtracting, the dimensions have to match. So the dimensions don't match. You can write the word undefined. Sometimes you'll see the word just impossible. Okay, either one of those. You don't normally see no solution because that kind of means something else, but impossible, undefined won't work. Okay, because of the dimensions not being the same. Okay. Scale factor. If I said 2A, what do you think you would do to A? Okay, so what would this top number be? What would the bottom number be? Bottom left. Okay, not square it. There's a 2 multiplied. So times it. 16 times 2, 32. -9 times 2, 2 times 2, and 8 times 2. Okay, so multiply every section and multiply each corresponding part by whatever the scale factor is. Okay, if I ask you to subtract, then you would subtract the 2. You can either do a mental math or use the calculator if you want to help you with your integer rules. Okay, last one, and then I'll show you a little bit more complicated version. -3b plus a. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take b and I want to multiply it by -3. So what's the top left?
Well,
Good. Here. Bottom left? 9. 21. That's not your answer. If there was multiple choice, I might throw that in there just to see if you would actually finish the problem. You then have to add a. So -12 add 16 is 28. +3 add 2, 5, 9, And negative 9?
0.
0. Don't leave it blank. 0 is a number, so put that 0 in there. 8, 21, 29. Okay? So the majority of the page will be like this. There's 2 questions that are a little bit harder because it's multiplication. And what you think would happen actually doesn't. Alright, so let's do 6 and negative 10, negative 3 and negative 2, times, so a little multiplication dot, negative 5 and 3, negative 4 and 3. My first guess, okay, even when I went back and kind of was writing down some notes for us, my first thought was probably your first thought. Okay, so I just do 6 times negative 5 and get to negative 30. Do I just multiply negative 3 times negative 4 and get to positive 12? And the answer is no. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated on the multiplication piece. I like to think horizontal times vertical. Okay, so you actually are taking both of these numbers times the vertical negative 5 and 3 and adding it together. Okay, so just kind of watch this first one and then I'll see if y'all can do the second one. So I take 6 times negative 5 and add negative 3 times 30. To get the top right section, I would take 6 times negative 3 and multiply it by negative 4 and 3. So 6 times negative 4, these first 2 numbers times the second 2 numbers, and add those together. So when you get to the bottom row, you take the bottom, negative 10 and negative 2, times horizontal times the vertical. So negative 10 times negative 5, negative 2 times 3, so the second number times the second number. Same thing on the last one, horizontal times the vertical. So the first number is multiplied, negative 10 and negative 4. The second numbers multiplied, negative 2 and 3, and add. So your final answer would be 6 times negative 5, negative 30, negative 3 times 3, negative 9, add negative 39. So it's kind of a lot more complicated than just position by position. You have to take the whole row and the whole column multiplied and take the sum of those 2 things. Okay. 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Add those together, you get negative 30. Negative 10 and negative 5 is positive 50. Negative 2 and 3 is negative 6. Add those, and it basically becomes a subtraction problem, 44. Negative 10, negative 4 is positive 40. Negative 2 and 3 is negative 6. 40 minus 6, 34. Okay, so you should get numbers completely different than just a generic multiply the spots on multiplication. And let's do one more and see if y'all can come up with it. Once you learn the pattern, it actually isn't hard, but you have to practice the pattern. 5 and negative 3, 9 and negative 2, times 2 and 6, and negative 1 and negative 5. Okay? Horizontal times vertical. So what would this first one be? 5 times 2, which is 10, plus 9 times 6. Okay? What would the top right be? 5 times negative 1, plus the second one, 9 times negative 5. Bottom row, a negative 3 and negative 2 times those. So negative 3 times 2 plus, what do you multiply negative 2 by? 6. And then we've done that one, so we'll do the next one. Negative 3 times negative 1
was negative 2 times negative 5.
Perfect. So once you practice the pattern, that's pretty easy. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time in our favor because we had 2 weeks closure, so we need to wrap this unit up. I'm not going to throw out you any other ones besides ones that match. You can multiply a 2 by 2 by a 2 by 1, but we're not going to get that far. If we can get kind of the basics of the matrix done, I'll be happy, okay? So that we can move on to that next unit in Unit 4, okay? Because remember, back to the parent functions at the very beginning of the year, we need a chapter for every parent function. And then you just go through and you say 5 times 2 is 10, 9 times 6 is 54, add those together, 64. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5, 9 times negative 5 is negative 45, add that to negative 50. Negative 3 times 2, negative 6, negative 2 times 6, negative 12, add negative 18. Negative 3, negative 1, positive 3. The negative times the negative is a positive 10. Add 13. So again, when you look at this beginning piece, okay, it's not just 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, don't do that. It's a little bit more complicated when you are multiplying the two together. Okay, so you should get numbers that are like, where does this even come from? Because there's more built in behind it. It's the whole row times the whole column sum together. Okay? All right, so I'm going to give you